I look at the GOP and say, well, I'm not a Republican. I have all these interests. What does the GOP actually do for me? Because when I look at the end of the day, what they are versus what I am, I see altogether different people, different religious beliefs, different socioeconomic class, different interests. And so my favorite adage on my show is I want to take my own side. I don't want to take the side of Republicans, whoever they may be or whatever they are. I don't know what a Republican is. I want to take my own side as a Zoomer white guy from the Midwest that has very distinct interests.
So one of the things that has rocketed Nick into the mainstream since June has been his outspoken critiques and beef with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Unless you're really new to the party, about a month ago, Nick had a debate with Andrew Tate discussing the relationship that far-right America First influencers should have with other influencers that share the majority of their views. While Nick, Candace, and Tucker Carlson probably agree on 90% of issues, we've seen the rift between those three, specifically between Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Nick Fuentes, dividing them grow wider and wider. Just yesterday, in fact, a vindicated Nick was ragging on Candace Owens for her stilted coverage of the letter between Charlie Kirk and Benjamin Netanyahu. Is this good for the right? Let's hear Nick and Glenn's opinion on this subject.
So there's this political tendency on the left that people complain about a lot of time that you'll see, and I think you're much more attuned to the differences among the left and establishment liberals than most people on the right are. To most people on the right, like Nancy Pelosi is the same as AOC, who's the same as Hassan Piker, who's the same as Chuck Schumer. It's kind of very similar to how a lot of people, liberals, see everybody on the right as this monolith and don't understand these very virulent differences. And one of the critiques is there's a huge number of people on the left who spend more time attacking AOC and Bernie Sanders for their failures than they do attacking, who knows, Joe Manchin, or even people further to the right like Donald Trump. And I've always understood the reason why, but I've heard that critique made of you. I think it was one of the reasons Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens felt a need to kind of criticize you in a way that clearly reflected some personal anger, which is like, look, we're kind of on his side. We've made some personal risks to go way out there on his main topic, which is Israeli influence, the influence of the Jewish lobby inside the United States. And yet he's done nothing but, kind of made us public enemy number one. And then you have these other people like Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh who on first glance seem to have a lot more in common politically with you than differences, and those two have become your main focal points of criticism. Now, like I said, I understand the reason for this. I'm somebody who also does that, but I want to understand your reasons for that. Like, why is it that you spend more time attacking and critiquing and kind of trying to get people to see the flaws in people who, at first glance, seem closer to you on the political spectrum than further away?
Well, I would say that, when we're talking to the right wing, they already know that the left, they know why the left is bad. They know the problems with the left, why we disagree with the left. But what we see with our own side, the Republican side, is that they're not really delivering for the actual constituents, for their actual base of supporters. And so it's sort of like, we know that we need to take on the left. The question is who is going to take on the left and how and what they're going to do with it. And my entire life and what I've seen even throughout the Trump movement is that the base is very clear about what we want. We really want fewer immigrants. We want to deport illegal immigrants. We want manufacturing in the country. That was obviously a big part of Trump's appeal. We don't want these wars, although I think many people, and I'm sure you know this, maybe overstate the Republican side's antipathy towards war, because whenever Trump bombs a foreign country, people like Tucker come out and you think, oh, the base is going to be furious. It's like, no, the Republican base every time supports the interventions when Trump does them. That's really besides the point. But it's really a question for, we're grappling with a different faction of the right wing, for control of the right wing, for kind of like the license or the opportunity to take on the left, and then therefore to rule, whether it's being the president or, control of the media or the institutions of the right wing. One of my favorite adages on my show is that when I see myself, I don't see myself as a Republican. I see myself as part of a socioeconomic class, as part of an ethnic class, as part of a social class. I was born, as Tucker famously said, in Chicago. My parents are working class. I'm an American ethnic. I'm not white in a sense. I'm Italian, Mexican, and Irish. And, as someone with kind of all these priors, I look at the GOP and say, well, I'm not a Republican. I have all these interests. What does the GOP actually do for me? Because when I look at the end of the day, what they are versus what I am, I see altogether different people, different religious beliefs, different socioeconomic class, different interests. And so my favorite adage on my show is I want to take my own side. I don't want to take the side of Republicans, whoever they may be or whatever they are. I don't know what a Republican is. I want to take my own side as a Zoomer white guy from the Midwest that has very distinct interests. And when you elect the GOP and you want industrial policy and deportations, and they give you H-2B or H-2A visas and corporate tax cuts, you're like, wait a second, we aren't really winning. Republicans are winning, but we are not. And so that's really, from the very beginning, I sort of recognized that's what Trump did. Trump raised a challenge first against the GOP establishment in the primary, then representing the opposition, took the fight to the left. And I said, that kind of the model, because what we got before that, and really what we've gotten since then, it's not actually good for the Republican base and constituency. And I know a lot of people on the left, it's like a mirror image with progressives and,
Bernie Sanders and
leftists.
Bernie Sanders and AOC are rallying against, we're going to have a Democratic revolution in the Democratic Party, and then they get in, they become Democratic Party hacks who spend all their time on Trump in a way that, any standard Democratic politician could.
So if you enjoyed that clip, I definitely go check out the full interview. I'm going to leave a link in the description or in the comment section, one of the two. It's about an hour and a half. I definitely recommend going to listen to the whole thing. But first off, to break this down, as Nick says, the right wing knows why the left is bad. There isn't actually any delivery from the right. And that's why Nick is focusing on the right. We know that conversation with the left doesn't get you anywhere. We saw concrete evidence of that just 2-3 weeks ago with the death of Charlie Kirk. Unfortunately, a lot of these people, and I hate to say it, you hate to say that people are beyond conversation, but that's what it seems. These people aren't going to listen to you. These people aren't going to come around to your beliefs by words alone. Not saying you should commit violent acts against them, of course. That's not what I'm saying. But as Nick says, you got to get to the point where I want to take my own side. You need to realize your own political beliefs. You need to realize your own moral grounding. You need to realize whatever religion you follow, hopefully Christianity. You got to recognize the tenets based in Christianity and how they manifest in the political and social world around us. And from then you can begin to have a conviction in your beliefs. Why is Nick so pervasive? Why is he so persuasive? It's because he has a concrete view of the world. And whether you believe that's wrong, whether you believe that worldview is right, it's concrete, and he's able to stand on that. And he's able to argue against other people using the beliefs that he stands on. Why do you think people like Hassan Pike or In Destiny are so finicky with their beliefs? Why do you think people don't like them? Because they don't actually have any beliefs. All of their debates, all of their points that they make in their discussions and arguments are based on winning the argument. They aren't based on any moral foundational principles. And so what Nick is saying is he's an absolutist. And you'll realize this about Nick. He will not budge. And that's admirable, but it's almost frustrating at some points. For example, when something good happens, he will tell you why they didn't go far enough. For example, Trump lowering border crossings right after his inauguration in January over the course of 3 months leading up to March and April, border crossings went to about zero, near zero, and they're still at that level. Now, there are some that we aren't going to be able to document that go completely under the radar, but those are few and far between. However, as this is going on, Nick is railing against Trump, saying there are no deportations going on. Why have Customs and Border Patrol agents and officials stopped uploading numbers to their website telling the American public how many people have been deported over the course of the past week, over the past month? And he really railed against Trump, and that got a lot of people on Twitter angry. And it's frustrating, especially at a time when we should be celebrating our successes. Why is Nick going against Trump like that? It's for this reason. Nick is an absolutist. If you give him an inch, he wants to take a mile, because that's what he truly believes in. He wants deportations. He wants the demographic shift in America to be reversed. And so he will do whatever it takes to accomplish that, through his rhetoric specifically. And that goes down to the deeper root issue, is that the right focuses on symbolic wins rather than actual wins. For example, Just a couple weeks ago, we had the Cracker Barrel logo controversy. Cracker Gate, as some are calling it. Nobody's calling it. I just called it that. But it's like you have a vast swath of the American right saying, oh, we beat woke because they were able to get a company to reverse their new age logo. Really? Is that what we're focused on? That's a symbolic. There's nothing of actual substance behind that. When we see videos of ICE raids, sure, some individuals may be getting deported, but what happens is the ICE X account will post a picture of somebody, some Mexican or Guatemalan or whatever, with a mask over their face and a hot ICE cop spun around so you can see their behind. And they'll post that on Twitter to get people riled up, people hyped that ICE is actually doing something, when in reality, there are less deportations going on than there were under Obama's tenure. And so to sum it all up, that's what Nick is saying. When he rails against right-wing influencers, he is saying, hey, I want this whole mile. I don't want to take little scraps. I don't want to take symbolic victories from the GOP. I want to hold their feet to the fire. I want to make sure that they're delivering to us what we got them into office to deliver. And when he rails against people like Tucker Carlson, when he rails against people like Candace Owens, he's putting the fire to their feet. Say, hey, come over to my side. I'm an absolutist. I'm going to stand firm on my beliefs, but I know I might be able to sway you a bit. You cannot concede any ground to the left because we've seen where that takes us. Since the 60s, since the Civil Rights Act, since the institution of Roe v. Wade, which was eventually reversed, thankfully, the institution of gay marriage, all you've seen conservatives do is not conserve, but give piece by piece to the left, to their enemies. People that, when roles are reversed, won't show any modicum of mercy, respect, or magnanimity towards them back. So that's enough of my rantings and ramblings. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of the situation. There's lots of things happening. Pay attention. Stay up on the news. But also take a step back and view this thing holistically. What are your beliefs? What do you stand firm on? Do you need to study more? Be humble about it. Do you understand how the world works around you? Seek to understand, and that's how you'll be able to do it step by step. I'm still working on it myself, but hopefully I'll get to a reasonable place at some point. This has been Peter Wiggin. If you enjoyed, subscribe, leave a comment talking about your thoughts, and leave a like as well if you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one.